Recorded Books and RB Digital present Category 5 by Dávila Cardinal. Narrated by Almarie Guerra. Chapter 1. Bio Bay, Vieques Island, Puerto Rico. Rigoberto sighed. Once again, the trio of gringo college students devolved into a splashing fight, using their kayak paddles to fling arcs of glowing water at each other in the velvety dark. The miracle of bioluminescence, organisms that lit up the water like microscopic fairies, was totally lost on them. Not to mention they clearly weren't taking classes in maturity at their pretentious Ivy League university. Rigo had only just finished high school, but he was about 3 decades more evolved than these douchey frat boys. He glanced over the dark bay, the stars of the moonless night reflected in the black surface of the water, as if there were heavens above and below. After Hurricane Maria, the mangrove trees had been practically stripped clean, but now, 9 months later, though they weren't yet tall, they were proud, their roots digging deep beneath the salty water, holding strong. It would take a lot more than a Category 5 hurricane to destroy those trees. Not that these a-holes would appreciate the magic of the place. He breathed deep and prepared his guide voice. "Gentlemen, if we could get back to the tour, so I can dump your asses downtown and head to Bananas for a cold beer and an intelligent conversation with my friends." But he left the second half of his thought unspoken. Insulting tourists didn't go over well. He'd tried it more than once. "Yeah, cut it out, you apes!" The leader, Jason, chastised the others with a smirk, even though he was the one who had started it. Rigoberto had met many versions of this kid during his various summer jobs on the island. They always came with an entourage, since he figured bullying was no fun alone. He glanced at his watch. 8:15 p.m. Only 45 minutes more. That's all Rigo was contracted for. He could survive that long. He sat up straight and returned to tour guide mode. The tiny island of Vieques was inhabited by indigenous peoples, the Taínos, 1,500 years before Columbus set foot in the Caribbean. "Indigenous, huh?" the smallest one said, then patted his mouth and did a racist hoot, laughing. But even his Neanderthal friends seemed to recognize how offensive that was, and no one laughed with him. Actually, no, that was giving them too much credit. They just seemed to ignore everything that one said. No one would blame me if I strangled them all and left them here. Seriously. He twisted in his seat to look back at the group, taking a head count without even thinking. It was something you had to do when running tours. 4. He faced forward. Wait, what? He spun his head around and looked over the group. 1, 2, 3. Phew. That was weird. He could have sworn he saw a 4th head. A chill passed over his skin, despite the warmth of the evening. This whole trip had him on edge. To top it off, that night the bay looked darker somehow. He was used to giving these tours in the pitch black, since it was the best way to see the dinoflagellates light up. But there was something menacing about the dark. Another shudder ran through him, as he felt something brush across the back of his neck. He just needed to finish this tour so he could go back to civilization and shake this creepy vibe. He turned around and continued in a monotone voice, since they weren't listening anyway, and they clearly weren't capable of actual learning. Then it was taken over by the Spanish, and eventually in 1941 the United States military took over 2/3 of the land, displacing residents and, some say, taking advantage of the islanders when they were struggling to recover from many tragedies. "Hey, watch it, amigo. My dad was military," Jason said. Of course he was. Rigoberto gave him his best.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?